everyone, and welcome to the Dyslexia Life Hacks Show. I'm your host, Matthew Head, and in this episode, I'd like to welcome back Jo Rees. She is the founder of Dyslexic Life with Jo Rees, where alongside her TikTok and podcast, she provides dyslexia assessment, school support, and keynote speaking. She was previously a guest on the show way back in episode 55, which came out in July 2023. A lot's happened with her since then. In the previous episode, we talked about motherhood, teaching career, and lots more. I plan to make this a standalone episode, but it's well worth diving into episode 55 if you want loads of background on Jo. But that leads me to welcome you back on the show, Jo.
Thanks so much for having me. It's exciting.
No problem at all. It's always fun to catch up. We bumped into each other quite a few times in person. We always have a laugh. So I thought one place I wanted to start with is the last time we spoke, you ran the company Another Way Around Dyslexia Support rather than Dyslexic Life with Jo Rees. So why the change?
Yeah. Well, the name of the company hasn't actually changed. So Another Way Around still exists. But that kind of came about because in the last 18 months, well, I guess it was happening at the time that we recorded the last episode. Social media had kind of really taken off for me. And my business, my Facebook page, my Instagram page were Another Way Round or variations of that. But my TikTok handle was always at Dyslexic Life with Jo Rees. And I actually recorded a podcast episode for somebody on the Isle of Wight where I live called Island Stories. And they were really frustrated because they couldn't find me on any of the platforms. And I said, it's because they've all got different handles. And they were like, you need to change that, Jo. Like, they all need to be the same. So we decided to change all of the handles to at Dyslexic Life with Jo Rees. But we also built a new website. And the plan is that I will have two companies, and that's one of the big missions for this year. So at Dyslexic Life with Jo Rees, we'll continue to do what Another Way Round has done in terms of we'll still be providing training, keynote speaking, influencer, content creation stuff. It's going to do everything it did before. And then Another Way Round, where actually the plan is to turn that into a community interest company. So that, again, I can still do assessments, but so that I can apply for grants and funding to begin to offer a bursary system for people that can't afford assessments. So they both still exist.
Okay. But what are you doing with the other side of the company? Are you going to more or less split it into two?
So at the moment, Another Way Round is doing exactly the same as at Dyslexic Life with Jo Rees. So I've only got one company. It's just I've changed the handle on social media, and I've set up a sister website ready to move it over. But yeah, the plan for this year is to look at how we can create a community interest company, and Another Way Round will become the community interest company. Because actually, I've had lots of discussions with people about this, and we love the name Another Way Round Dyslexia Support because, my best friend named it all of those years ago, and she said, that's what you need to call it, Jo, because you constantly find another way round. Like if you find something difficult, you will find your own way around it, another way around it. So I love that name, but yeah, we just decided to just kind of align everything on social media, and then we just needed a website really to go with that. But yeah, so they're both there.
Did you regret not calling TikTok Another Way Around?
No, because it's interesting, isn't it? I think, and I'm still learning all the time, and I'm still evolving. But I think TikTok. I think where TikTok kind of really took off is that's much more candid. So I would say, at Dyslexic Life with Jo Rees it is at Dyslexic Life with Jo Rees. It's normalizing how dyslexia shows up in everyday life. It's the kind of more fun side of me, if you like, and the kind of realer side of me. Whereas Another Way Round, I feel like, is more kind of the corporate business side, more about the training, more about the assessment. So yeah, we've had lots of discussions over whether they should all be the same thing. And when we kind of moved the handle, we were like, right, are we going to go with that Dyslexic Life with Jo Rees, or are we going to go with Another Way Round? And we decided, because the following was so big on TikTok, and that's what kind of people knew me for, that's what we went with.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I think sometimes if you're going to rebrand, you've got to rebrand to the brand that more people know.
Yeah. And I think, when I set up Another Way Round dyslexia support, and it's 9 years ago now, when I set that up, I think, it was just with a view of I needed a name, I needed to set up a company, and it just kind of, it was just there. And like I say, I don't not like it. I love the name, but I just feel like, particularly with where I've been kind of going and how I've been evolving and kind of what's been happening, you kind of get known for who you are. So if I'd have changed TikTok to Another Way Round, people wouldn't have really known who I was.
No. It is a tricky one. And how are you coping with the kind of social media, I think, for want of a better phrase, explosion of your following? Like, it was pretty big last time we spoke on the podcast, but it just seems to grow and grow and grow. Like, you're your own dyslexia celebrity now, really, particularly within the community.
Well, there was an incident when I was recognised, but I'll tell you about that in a minute. It was quite funny. Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things that, interestingly, it hasn't grown very much at all in the last 6 months, and I've been a little bit frustrated about that in some ways. But, when I first started, the social media stuff, TikTok in particular, not so much Instagram. But when I started TikTok, it was really with a view to, if I could just help one person with each video I made, then it was doing its job. And I would say, that's my same kind of ethos, really. I mean, today, literally, I've posted about 7 videos and they've all had hardly any views. But actually, the videos have been answering questions that are specific to people, and it's just easier to respond and answer it in a video question than it is to kind of type a comment. So I've always really enjoyed kind of the video and the supporting people that way. One of the things I've been really trying to focus on growing is actually my reputation on LinkedIn, because I wasn't really on LinkedIn, and there's a reason for that. And I've talked about it quite candidly on lots of podcasts and things. So apologies if you've heard this before, but LinkedIn made me feel a bit like I was back at school for a long time. I was like one of those silent stalkers that would kind of scroll and think, oh, everybody's totally got this and I just haven't. And I was kind of too scared I would post the odd thing. The lady, Incredible Rosie, that helps me with my social media, she would make me post things on there in the content plan, and I'd think, oh, I'd never be posting this if I was on my own, but you're going to make me post it, and that's okay. But yeah, for a long time, I was really scared to be visible on LinkedIn because I worried, I guess there's something to be said about my own dyslexia journey, in as much as I still didn't really necessarily trust my voice and trust my experience. And that was a bit of a hangover from undiagnosed dyslexia, I think, from all those times that I missed the point or didn't quite say the right thing. And I think I didn't quite know how to deal with that. And then it must have been May time last year, I was invited by Jamie Waste to go to London and record a YouTube series called Decoding Dyslexia, which I went and did, which was incredible. And it was 9 YouTube episodes. And obviously there were quite a lot of people they recorded. I think there was about 16 of us across 2 days that they interviewed. And I mean, that was incredible because it was like an actual recording studio with like cameras and lights and like everything. It was all of it.
I remember seeing the photo of you.
Yeah. It was an incredible experience, but obviously there was a lot of editing to do. So it didn't actually go live, I don't think, until sort of September time. And it was really around then, and Dr. Martin Blumenfield, who I have followed avidly, because he truly does brighten and enlighten my day in terms of his perspective of stuff. Like, I really respect the academic work and stuff that he's done. He tagged me in, because obviously I was one of the people in it, and I was like, oh my goodness, perhaps I can do LinkedIn. And in the last 6 months, I've been trying really hard to be a bit more active on there and kind of contribute and be a bit more of a kind of thought leader, I guess, on there in terms of sharing my personal experiences. Because I think with TikTok, for me, felt a lot less threatening because I wasn't having to write things down. It was a very visual platform. Whereas with LinkedIn, I feel like There are lots of people on there that actually do academic research, which actually isn't necessarily my area of expertise. It's much more a written platform, so I'm having to think much more about my grammar. It doesn't kind of flow as naturally, I guess, if I'm, posting on there. But yeah, slowly but surely, I've built quite a nice network on there as well. And I think what's really good is, for me, LinkedIn is a really good place to learn and challenge my thinking. So TikTok is great because I can present the information to the masses, if you like, but it's not necessarily moving my thinking on in terms of challenging my thought processes or allowing me to learn. Whereas I would say LinkedIn is a platform where it really challenges me. It challenges my thought processes, like, when people tag you in research or, make comments about research or the definition, for example, the New Delphi definition. Like, I feel from that point of view, it's really kind of improving my knowledge as somebody with dyslexia.
Yes. Yeah. It's interesting hearing your thoughts on using a different platform, because everything had taken off on TikTok, but you clearly had to completely rethink how to do LinkedIn. Because the question I had in my mind before you said about the video versus more written content on LinkedIn was, can you recycle some of the content from TikTok onto LinkedIn? Or is it the same thing, but you have to kind of spin it a different way and present it a different way?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So sometimes I will... So let's talk about content in general. So my poor lady that helps me with my social media despairs of me because she tries to get me to plan in advance so she knows what to schedule. So we do a handful of posts where we plan in advance. But I'm not very good at being told what to do. And I don't mean being told what to do. But like if she says like next week it's Children's Mental Health Week and she's like, right, I need 2 posts on children's mental health. And I'm like, I don't know anything about children's mental health. And she's like, of course you know about children's mental health. And I'm like, I know, but I just can't tap into that bit of my brain quickly. I've noticed that I'm much more of a responder, but we've got a really nice balance now because she makes me, so we plan a month in advance. So we do an element of, then I know there's a couple of posts going out every week. And then I ad hoc. I'm really a responder, so I like to write about or talk about things that kind of happen. So, for example, the other day I did an assessment and there were some really good examples of dyslexic spelling, so I made a video about that. But that wouldn't necessarily be, obviously, confidentially. In terms of not naming any people, but, talking about the types of spelling errors, because I was like, oh, this would make like a really good video because there's really good examples of the types of errors that somebody with dyslexia would make. So it was like really educational from that perspective. That perhaps wouldn't have landed anywhere near as well on LinkedIn because the people on LinkedIn wouldn't necessarily need to know that sort of information. So I guess some things I put on certain platforms because I feel like they lend themselves to certain platforms. Sometimes I will turn a video into a written post. Sometimes I will turn a written post into a video. But one of the things which is quite interesting is I actually do really love writing. I like putting words together. And I did a post about that actually just this weekend on LinkedIn. And it's ironic and it's a contradiction because I was scared of words for such a long time because grammatically I really struggled with spelling. But I've realised that I have this strategy to build my vocabulary. And several times a day, if I hear a word or if I'm really not sure what a word means, I'll Google it and I'll check what it means. But not only that, I'll go sideways and look at a thesaurus and find loads of other words that kind of mean the same thing. And I've realised that that's a dyslexic strategy, and I've done that since I was really little, but with an actual dictionary and a thesaurus. And I can remember being 10 and actually asking for a dictionary and a thesaurus for Christmas. It would take me hours because I couldn't necessarily find what the word started with. But that's a strategy I've kind of had for a really long time. But I think one of the things that's quite interesting is I really love writing, and on my personal Facebook profile, I would quite often not go into a rant, but I'd write like a really lovely post about dyslexia or whatever, and nobody would really be interested. Why would they be? They're my friends from university. So it wouldn't get much traction. But actually what's quite nice is I feel like I found a place now to put those posts, and that place is kind of LinkedIn. So quite often I'll still post to my personal Facebook, just to kind of spread awareness, because actually, interestingly, there are quite a lot of dyslexic people that follow me on my personal Facebook profile now. But yeah, LinkedIn is a really good place to kind of share those revelations.
Must admit, I have a similar strategy, saying about the thesaurus thing, because you like typing a word like, nope. Come on, brain, serve me a different word that means the same that I can actually spell. There you go. Before I move on to anything else, I do need to circle back to you alluding to a story about being recognised.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. So since I've last spoken to you, he's been to Australia for a year. He is now back. He's been back for 6 months. But yeah, he went off to Australia. And the first weekend he was back, we went out for dinner. We went to a local pub. And my husband had jokingly been saying, I can't wait for the first time you're going to be recognised. And I was like, seriously, nobody is going to recognise me. I don't know what you're going on about. Anyway, we go to this pub. I go to the bar and order, and it's really weird. The people behind the bar were just being really weird, like whispering. So I didn't think anything of it other than just feel like they're being a bit weird. Like I feel like we've intruded a conversation or something. Anyway, a bit later on, they bring our dinner over. And then when they clear our plate, she says to me, I'm really sorry, but I need to ask, are you the Jo Rees from TikTok? And I was like, I don't know about being the Jo Rees. Like, I am Jo Rees, and yes, I am on TikTok. And she was like, oh, could I have a selfie with you? I was just like, wow, I wasn't mortified, because I was like, well, if it's going to make your day, that's totally fine. But my poor kids were just like, this is just hilarious, Mum. Well, yeah, and the other really funny one was, so since I've last spoken to you, it might be on your list of things to talk to me about, but I did a conference on the Isle of Wight.
Oh, it might be on my list.
Yeah. But when I phoned to book the venue, was looking for venues, and phoned up and again sort of explained what it was I wanted to do. And she's like agreeing with me or whatever. And then she said, can I just take a name? And I gave my name. And then there was like this deathly silence. And then she went, you're Jo Rees that does dyslexia on TikTok, aren't you? So I was like, yeah. And she was like, do you live on the Isle of Wight? So I was like, yeah, I do. She was like, I follow you. I had no idea that you lived on the Isle of Wight. So she was like, we'll do you a really good deal. So I was like, good.
There you go. Notoriety helps.
Yes, absolutely.
Seeing as you jumped the gun, I was about to go to the Isle of Wight Dyslexia Conference or Festival, as I've got written down in my notes. For context to particularly any international listeners, where the Isle of Wight is there, go to the right to the bottom of England, and there's a little spot of island right at the bottom in the English Channel. That's the Isle of Wight. You can walk across it in a day for charity. That's how small it is. And you have to get there by ferry, which is always entertaining. So where did the idea of the conference start from?
Insight into my dyslexic ADHD brain here. So basically, there hasn't been a dyslexic service on the Isle of Wight for about 10 years since I was made redundant. There was one teacher that covered the whole of the island for about 18 months after we were made redundant. But she's been gone for quite some time now. So the Isle of Wight is quite small, and I do have a bit of a reputation for being the dyslexic lady on the Isle of Wight. So prior to doing what I do now, I was a SENCO, a Special Educational Needs Coordinator, just to give context to that, in a local primary school. So actually I've got quite a good relationship with lots of the primary schools anyway. So I'm sort of a port of call for lots of SENCOs to email me, Jo, what's the latest resource for? Jo, what's the latest screening tool for? And so it must have been April time. So March we did the dyslexia show. And as I kind of came away from the dyslexia show, I was thinking I've got some really quite cool contacts now. Like, I wonder if I could like just create like a 1-day conference. I don't know. Like, just kind of floated the idea in my head, then didn't think about it anymore because I got home and family chaos started. And then this one particular week in April, I had an email from 2 Senkos asking me about screening tools, 3 schools asking me about dyscalculia training, 2 schools asking me about Louise Selby's Morph Mastery program. And I thought, do you know what? I've emailed them all back separately. What if I created an event that those people would come to? So the thing was, I knew I was going to have some money up front. I was going to need to have some money up front to put that on. And the other thing was, I know that lots of these conferences, the speakers speak for free, but I felt like it was a really big ask to ask people, any speaker, to come to the island, which is a ferry ride away. It's only an hour ferry ride away, but it is a ferry ride away, and I wanted them to be there the whole day. And I'll explain why in a minute. So I worked out a rough budget of kind of how much I would potentially pay the speakers, how much the venue would be, all that sort of stuff. I got a really good relationship with Hampshire Dyslexia Association. And we'd had conversations about how there was a sum of money, a legacy sum of money that had been left to them. And they'd put aside a certain amount to spend on the Isle of Wight. So I basically contacted the incredible Sue and Frank McKenna, who are the chair and the secretary, and said, look, this is my plan. I want to run a conference on the Isle of Wight. Is this something that Hampshire Dyslexia Association would potentially support in terms of the funding? And they were like, we need to get buy-in from the trustees, but I don't see why not. So they said, get exact prices from the venue, line up your exact speakers, get a date, and we'll properly pitch it. So it was all booked within 48 hours. So I approached Dr. Helen Ross because I wanted her to come and talk about the new Delphi definition of dyslexia. I approached the Dyscalculia Network. Rob came. I approached Jamie Wace and asked him to come and talk about the Talamo screening tool. Who else came? Louise Selby came to do a really incredible Morph Mastery workshop. And then Aaron came with Send Books. He managed to sneak in there. And it was just incredible. So I just did the first 15-minute keynote speak at the beginning because I wanted to talk about how and why I decided to do a conference. And it was really beautiful because whenever I speak, my parents never get to see me speak because I'm not on the island. They don't really understand what I do. And it was just incredible because they came along to the first 15 minutes and were able to kind of see what I'd created. And I might get a bit teary now. It's even more emotional because I kind of dedicated the conference to my dad because he is the original undiagnosed dyslexic in my family. And I really wanted him to see that things have moved on since he was at school and that it is different. And he actually sent me a text after he left, just stayed for the 15 minutes. And he said, I can't tell you how incredible it is to see so many people in person in the same room that care enough to try and make a difference. Like, he was just really touched by the amount of people that had turned up. It was a sellout. I had representation from all but 6 schools on the Isle of Wight. The day ran like clockwork. Like, the day before, I can't tell you, it felt like Christmas. People kept saying, are you nervous? And I'm like, no, I'm just really excited. It feels like Christmas Eve. Like, these people are coming to my island. They're sending me selfies of them on the ferry. Like, it's just incredible. And it did. So the 2 really powerful things though, one of the things where we did a round table discussion. So, which is why I wanted the speakers all day. So all of the professional speakers went and sat on a different table and we had a really brilliant professional discussion. So it meant that everybody had kind of one-to-one input or like small group input with one of the professionals that was there. And then at the very end of the day, we did a panel Q&A. So Aaron came on the panel as well. Hampshire from Dyslexia Association was on the panel as well. And we just opened the floor to questions. And I can honestly say it was the most powerful part of the day because the panel had such a breadth of experience on it. You know, you had lived experience, you have, you know, people that have done jobs before they've been in school. There were Senkos on there, people that had been teachers, people that had worked in primary, people that had worked in secondary. So every question, naturally, 2 or 3 of the panel were able to answer it, but answer it from a different perspective. Like, you literally couldn't have written it. It was just like so perfect. So that was the conference. Very exciting.
Yeah. Wow. And for your first conference to go as smoothly as that is a feat by itself, because you normally hear stories that people are running around like headless chickens until the minute the doors open and they got no control of it anymore.
I mean, I have to be honest, Hampshire Dyslexia Association were incredible in terms of their support. So they said, you market it, we'll deal with all of the invoices for you. And they did all of the booking and they dealt with the venue in terms of sorting the food and stuff out. And we also had some incredible sponsors. So IDL came along and supported. And Lily Lamps were also there, and Aaron came along from Send Books. So the plan is there will hopefully be another one this year. And the plan is this year is to try and get kind of a bit more sponsorship and to get more stands there, I think, actually, because I was worried that there wouldn't be very much time for people, to kind of look at the stands and stuff. But interestingly, we had like quite a long lunch, kind of like a networking lunch. So yeah, there kind of would be. And I think because we're an island, it is, sometimes we are quite isolated from what goes on the big island.
The mainland.
On the mainland. But what's quite interesting is there are actually quite a lot of forward-thinking people on the island. It just needs to be put in front of them. And I think the issue is, you know, education on the island, and we're just going through another restructure now where we're having to close several schools because we've got so many surplus places. And it's just not financially viable to keep all the schools open. But historically, we've been through some really challenging times. So we had a restructure about 10 years ago where we went from primary, middle and high to primary and high school. So lots of schools closed then. Like I say, we're just in the process of, the island are in the process of closing schools at the moment. So actually, in terms of morale and budget and those practicalities of things, it's been really tricky for the island. So I really wanted to create something that was affordable and really met their needs and kind of excited them in terms of energized them in terms of going forward. And the really brilliant thing is there was only one head teacher came, but the head teacher that came has been really proactive, and she's told all of the heads that everybody should have a representation if we do another one, because it was just a really incredible day. But she has booked Rob. She's an executive head teacher that manages 3 schools. So she's booked Rob to come and do dyscalculia consultancy in her 3 schools, but also to run insets after school, which are open to the whole of the island. And Louise has been booked by the local authority to come and do more morph mastery training. And she's also going to be working really closely with the executive head teacher to look at how they can implement specific programs in her schools. So there's been quite a big domino effect going forward, which is amazing.
Yeah, wow. That certainly sounds like a lot come out of it, which is always good. I'm always interested in, if you plan something like an event like that, how you keep tabs on the after effect of it and what ripples it creates, if any, which it sounds like it's made a lot.
Yeah. I think what's really lovely is actually people have sort of told me that that's happening, but, you know, even though the head teacher has gone ahead and booked some stuff for her school, she's very much kept me in the loop. And, you know, Rob and Louise have been brilliant because they've kind of told me what they've been up to. Louise has asked me to be her assistant for the day when she does like her whole day training. So, you know, it's really lovely. I think it's about relationship building, really. And, you know, at the end of the day, I just want provision on the island to be better in terms of I just need kids' needs to be met. And I don't care who does that, you know, as long as somebody's doing that. That's the thing that's really, you know, that's the thing that feels really important to me.
Yeah, definitely. And it's good you are able to use the influence you have to make a positive impact, to put things like this together. So you said you did obviously the intro to the festival. What were you, of panels and stuff, but what were you doing during it? Were you having to run around to stage manage the whole thing, or?
No, I mean, I'm going to touch some sort of wood now because I can't, it was obviously just really meant to be. So we did attempt to do a load of social media content. With the speakers and things. But unfortunately, it was a lesson that I really did need to buy a proper microphone. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to use any of it because the sound wasn't good enough. So I actually spent quite a lot of time creating this content that we couldn't actually use. But yeah, kind of some of it was just learning and watching the other speakers. Like you know, everybody had such interesting insight that, you know, there was actually times where I could sit down and just enjoy what was going on.
Ah, how good is that?
I know.
I do feel like it might be lulling into a false sense.
I know. I was just like that. I don't know how this is going so smoothly, but it did. That's why I'm slightly scared to do another one, because I think, oh, would it ever go that smoothly again? Maybe it was just a one-off, one-hit wonder.
That was easy. I'll do it twice the size. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. But I think, you know, we did have, one of the things was we did sell out, but we kept saying yes to people because we kind of didn't want to say no. And they did say the capacity was bigger than the amount of people we'd capped it at. So that's why we kind of kept saying yes, but actually it wasn't. So next year it will properly sell out. Like when it's full and you'll be on a waiting list. But yeah, this year, I really want to, some of the feedback was that, a couple of the schools want more on dysgraphia. So I'm thinking about doing a session on that. And also, I'm just going to put it out there, manifest it to the universe. I'd quite like Fintan O'Regan to come and talk about ADHD. So yeah, I'm thinking about having like an ADHD session as well. So yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely. Spin it out to more neurodiversity. Particularly as quite a lot of them cross over as well. It's always useful to get more information. What was your favourite part of it? I
think my favourite part was the fact that it wasn't supposed to start. Doors opened at 9:15. And we were supposed to start at originally I was like, we'll start at 9, and I thought there's no way we'll get like 80 people in by 9 o'clock. Like, we're going to have to knock everything back 15 minutes. There was a queue out the door at 8:30 in the morning of people like that just couldn't wait to come in. But I think probably doing my keynote speak in front of my parents, just because they don't really, not that they don't get what I do, but it's very difficult to explain to them my dad worked in a factory his whole life. Like my mum's always done a 9-to-5 job. So they don't really get what I do. You know, I hop on a call, I record a podcast, I create TikTok videos. Like they don't really get what it was. Just really lovely for them to just witness, for me to kind of do that talk in front of them, but also for them to just be part of, because I wouldn't be where I was if it wasn't for them. You know, they've been super supportive the whole way through. And
just to finish this out, really, what would you change if you did it again? Is there a particular point you're like, maybe I shouldn't have done that?
Yeah, we'd need a slightly bigger venue. The only thing I would change would be a slightly bigger venue. But honestly, if it was as perfect as it could have been, like that was literally the only thing that was wrong with it. And the only other thing was we only had one mic, which was a handheld mic. And actually we could have done with a headset mic, but the budget just couldn't stretch to that. It's why, again, I'd quite like to look at sponsors if I did it again, because I'd quite like to improve that side of it. It didn't matter massively, because actually the room was big enough that we could all be heard and you could kind of shout and it was all okay. But yeah, I guess the tech thing and just a slightly bigger room, really.
So that leads me to ask, really, TikTok content creation across LinkedIn, various social media platforms, you plan a festival in the Isle of Wight, you do all these assessments. How the hell do you fit it all in? Because quite a lot of them sound like a full-time job.
Yeah, don't forget that I'm actually mum to 3 children. Taxi, and a wife, taxi service. I really don't know. I think I really don't know. I'll be honest with you, Matt. There are times when I don't feel like I've done enough. And I'm actually having coaching myself at the moment with Darren Clark, because I feel like I've been on a bit of a journey at the moment with my own dyslexia, in as much as that whole, have I done enough? Am I good enough? Like, should I, like, so I think it's interesting, but I think I've got really, really good support from my husband and really, really good support from my family. And I just do what I can every day. But there are times, it was really weird, the day after the conference, definitely had post-conference blues. And I just felt really lonely. I was just like, I'm all on my own on my island and everyone else is on the big island. Like, I felt quite isolated from everybody. But yeah, I think I've always been somebody that if I decide to do something, I do it, and I do it well. But yeah, it's tricky at times. There is a colour-coded spreadsheet on the kitchen cabinet. There has to be. But yeah, I mean, when I look at not just what I've achieved in the last year, but what I've enabled my kids to achieve as well. Dyslexia is not a barrier for them. It is a lot. I mean, I think we didn't have as many productions last year as the year before, because in case you don't know, my kids do a lot of musical theatre. So yeah, I think we only had 8 productions last year, but they had a lead in most of them. And one of them was off island. Middle one passed her driving test, got her through that, but that was a means to an end, because I was like, if you can drive yourself, that is really helpful. That gives me a bit more time back. But yeah, and I've just done, so straight after the conference, we were straight into, my middle one is off to university in September, musical theatre school. So we just had to do all of her UCAS, and I think sometimes I forget, and I have this conversation with Natalie a lot, sometimes I forget that I am doing this while I'm raising a family, and that's not an excuse, but actually it is a juggle at times, and I couldn't do it if they weren't really supportive and really quite independent. I mean, my latest thing at the moment is my youngest is currently talking about looking for opportunities and fitting so much stuff in. She's very like me, and she's managed to get herself on an exchange in Canada. So at the moment, she's literally halfway through 6 weeks in Canada, and she's so funny because she's got none of her after school clubs or anything there. She's just like, Mum, I've just got all this time.
What am I going to do with myself?
Because here, she has no time, because she goes from one thing to another thing.
Yeah, but sometimes you have to stop and breathe.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I did have October half term, we had this window where all of the kids were here. And I think it will be the last window that we would have. We actually went on holiday to New York and didn't do any social media that week. And also over Christmas, I made the real conscious decision to not be on social media really at all for sort of 2 weeks. And again, I think there's something to be said for learning to trust it will still be there when you get back. But it is difficult, I think, to switch off. And I think particularly I'm learning more and more about ADHD and how I'm probably that way inclined. But actually it is difficult. Sometimes it's really difficult to switch your head off. So you're better off keeping going than you are completely stopping. I've discovered, for me personally, it just makes me more anxious. So I try and both of those, October and Christmas, I tried to make a real conscious effort to tie up all the loose ends before I went away or before I put social media down, so that I didn't have to worry.
And I imagine there's a little bit of anxiety with, particularly the platform on social media as big as yours, that you've spent so long cultivating it that if you stop, does it all start to atrophy the moment you stop? And I guess it didn't, by what you're saying. Yeah,
but like I say, it does slow down. But I mean, I think the thing that's interesting is I do the social media, and don't get me wrong, I love the social media, but I wasn't ever somebody that woke up one day and thought, I'm going to be a content creator. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to develop, some people, that is their actual plan. I feel like that's something that's happened not by accident, because I've worked really blooming hard at it, but it's something that is there at the moment and it might not be there forever. But all the time, you know, it's supporting people and helping people, and I've got something to say, I'll do it. Because that's the other thing I find. Sometimes I haven't got anything to say. You're like that. I've got to make a TikTok today and I don't know what am I going to say? I've run out of things to say. So that's the other thing that I've kind of learned, that it's okay to have that kind of ebb and flow of sometimes you've got lots to say and other times you haven't got very much to say. And I think actually times when I'm busier, ironically, I have more to say and time just expands because of the way that I've said, like, I'm a bit of a responder. So, you know, the more assessments I'm doing or the more coaching I'm doing, the more TikToks I'm posting, the more questions I'm getting or the more things I've got to kind of talk about. So yeah, I guess I just thrive being busy.
Yeah, and some people do, don't they? They just, it was an interesting thing I was hearing. I can't remember exactly what the context was, but I think it's more to do with corporate jobs, that quite a lot of like work-life balance is important, but some people just need to run. They just want to run. And if you pull them back to the work-life balance, they actually get more miserable. Like, you just need to let the gazelles go.
Yeah. But, you know, I think because I've got the kids, there are times when I just have to stop. And actually, it's one of the things that I want to talk about a bit more this year, is I really want to talk about being a neurodiverse parent and having neurodiverse children, because your neurodiversity definitely spills into your parenting and kind of how you cope with everyday life. So I think sometimes the kids make me naturally stop from work, so not necessarily stop from life. So it's like this weekend, actually they're not in the production, but somehow I'm still chaperoning all weekend. But you know, but actually that means that I won't be able to be on social media. I won't be able to be sat at my desk, because when I'm at home, it's really difficult not to creep into my office to kind of like and do a bit of work. So actually their kind of hobbies and clubs and stuff naturally build in those kind of down times to be away from work.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, particularly with your musical theatre productions. They take a lot of work.
Yeah, you know, all sorts of stuff, you know.
Do they, I guess they also probably have a great way of sort of auto-correcting you as well. Like, Mum, we haven't seen you. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, and just the nature of what they do, you know, kind of, like I said, they are super busy. So there is a lot of driving around still for the younger one. And actually, interestingly, since Bill's been back, I mean, the dynamic changes all the time. Like, so that my kids are 5 years apart. So yeah. So when I had them, I had a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and then a baby. So had them quite close together, 5 years apart. Can't remember where I was going with that now. Oh yeah, but the dynamic kind of changes on between them, but also on how they kind of need me and what we're up to. So there was a period of time where I seemed to be driving everywhere and there wasn't time to get home. So I would be walking or shopping or chatting to the other parents, kind of why they were in that dance class. Whereas now it's sort of shifted again, because 2 of them are driving. So they sort of actually drive my younger one around quite a lot. They're quite keen to do the driving in the evening at the moment. So, you know, I've suddenly kind of got all this time again. So I am having to be really aware that because I'm not having that time with them in the car, how am I building that time in? But we've always had, one of the things my mum and dad always taught me was it's really important to have a meal around the table all together. And actually we do that every night. And a Sunday night is a non-negotiable, where we do kind of all have dinner together. And then we try and do cards or something like that afterwards, which is really nice. Yes. Important to build in some of the routine, isn't it? Because you could so easily, and I'm guilty of this, when got stuff on the go and bits and pieces, come home, chuck something in the microwave, eat it, do something on my phone as well as do something else. It's like, hang on, what am I doing? Need to stop and talk to people here. Cool. Well, I think, that feels like a nice place to kind of leave it. Normally I ask guests rapid fire questions in the podcast, but you have already answered them on the previous episode.
I know. I wonder if my answers would be the same, though.
That was where I was going with this, almost like you predicted this.
I genuinely didn't know. Oh, this is where I screwed up last time.
Yes, you did, because you gave me an extra bit of audio to tag on the end.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yes, I remember seeing the post about that. By the way, I thought of this a day later.
Yeah, that's how my processing works. And then we wonder why I didn't pass any GCSE exams.
Yeah, wake up the next day. Yeah. That's what happened in the 1940s.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's get some of these on the road. Seeing as July 2023 would have been the last. Well, that's when the episode went out, so we had recorded it probably a month.
I think we recorded. I can tell you exactly when we recorded it. We recorded it at the beginning of May because we recorded it, and then I went off to the theatre to watch Return to the Forbidden Planet, which my youngest was in at the time.
There you go. Yes, because I had a lot in the can at that point. Right, let's do this. Rapid fire question number 1. What prejudice about dyslexia have you had that has been proven wrong?
Oh, these questions really mess with my head. I think it is that whole you can't be dyslexic, you've got a degree, or you run your own business.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think
job.
Yeah, and I'm going to be a little bit controversial here. I think the other thing is our children have actually had scholarships to go to an independent school. I'm not getting political, but that's where they've ended up because that's where I felt like the best support has been. And I think there's been an assumption that we're really wealthy, and that's how I was educated, and it was not how I was educated. And we've worked really hard to make that decision. And possibly that sometimes that dyslexia support is better in independent schools, and it's not necessarily. It's just smaller class sizes, but yeah. Yes,
it is an interesting one when people of backgrounds of both, and it's interesting how stuff is. But yeah, it does sort of sometimes smaller class sizes, more specialist teachers, and it varies depending on which one you go to, as all things.
I maintain, actually, teachers in mainstream school are incredible. Kudos to them. They are incredible. They're just asked to do a really difficult job.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Okay, rapid fire question number 2. If an alien landed and you had to describe dyslexia to them, how would you do it?
So I would describe dyslexia. So this isn't like a posh definition. This is how I see it in me. So dyslexia for me is a difficulty with the way I process language and words. So that then impacts any literacy-based task. Not that I can't do that task, but my efficiency and speed to be able to do that task is a bit wonky. I mean, it's not grounded in any academic research, but...
No, but, I've had researchers on that give me the technical definitions. We're trying to get as broad as possible with this.
Yeah, well, you're broad with me because it's all
lived. Cool. And rapid fire question number 3, and you're not allowed to promote your own products for this. What is your favourite dyslexia life hack?
Oh, we had this before, didn't I? And this is where I went wrong. And I am sticking with... No, I'm not. I'm changing it. Inner confidence. I was going to say blag it, and I was like, no, actually, because it's about that inner confidence. If you can't believe that you can do something, you can't blag it, because how can you make somebody else believe you've got it? So actually, I think for me, the hack is to really know how dyslexia manifests itself in you and to have that inner confidence and totally trust yourself.
Which I think was the answer you gave me when you had the blag it live, and then you had the inner confidence one as the extra bit of audio. So I think it's still the same. No, and it's a really important one, I think, as quite a lot of things in life, some self-belief and actually matching your internal thoughts of yourself with actually what externally you do in the world is quite important, because...
I mean, this isn't very quick fire, but I think...
It's all right. It was only quick for me, so it's fine.
For me, I think, mindset is often a bigger barrier than the dyslexia itself.
Yes. Yes.
And I think that tracks back to, unfortunately, the curriculum and education and school is not set up for people with dyslexia. So they experience so much failure in that system that is not balanced out with success. So don't have an issue with experiencing failure, but what I do have an issue with is when you don't experience enough success to balance that out. So what happens is your internal monologue and external prejudice about dyslexia are, well, I'm not very clever, or I'm never going to be able to do that, or I always make mistakes, or I've put 110%, but I've still not got an A. So I think what happens is we leave school and we're a little bit broken. We haven't got that inner confidence. And I often think with the people that I support that actually it doesn't matter how much reading and spelling skill we do. If you haven't got the inner confidence and the inner belief that you can be anything you want to be, you're never going to find a way around your dyslexia. Yeah, I think it's an interesting one.
I do too. And it's something I'm still constantly working on. Even in just life in general, like you get feedback on what you're doing at work or with people you've interacted with and helped out. It's like, that doesn't sound like the person I know. Maybe I am out of calibration on that one.
Yeah. I think, and I don't think it's ever 100% there. And I've talked a lot about that earlier, I think it evolves and it changes all the time. And I think you can just think you've cracked it, but then the routine changes. You get a new manager at work, or you have to learn a new process, and all of those strategies or things that you've got in place that you've been using suddenly don't work anymore. The difference between somebody that can manage dyslexia well and somebody that doesn't is at that point they're flawed. They don't know where to go next. They retreat back inside and they're like, it's game over for a bit. Whereas somebody that manages their dyslexia really well will go, right, this has happened before. This is just dyslexia kicking in. We need to go back to the drawing board. What strategies have I got that I can put on?
Yes, cool. Right. One more thing before we go. Anything else you'd like to add? And where can people find you?
I think we've had a good conversation there, Matt. So people can find me. You did say I like to talk, and I've tried not to talk too much. So at Dyslexic Life with Jo Rees is the handle on all of the social media. So that's where you find me. It's all consistent everywhere. I say everywhere. Yeah, everywhere. Just find that Dyslexic Life with Jo Rees. And if you put me in, my husband's favourite thing to do is to pop Jo Rees and dyslexia into Google and click videos. And he's like, that, Joe, your head is all over the computer. I'm like, please don't do that. These videos are not designed for you. Or when friends do it and they're like, I'm like, you're not my ideal audience. Like, you don't need to know what I'm saying here.
Well, your husband just wants to see more of it, clearly.
It's just like that, yeah, anyway. Bless.
Cool, right. Well, that leaves me to thank you very much for taking the time to come on the show.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. And I want to thank everybody else for taking the time to listen, and I'll speak to you in the next episode. Bye for now.